cybersecurity as well as personal
as I know.
We have a number of ex-three-letter agency intel people that work for us in the cyber side. We have ex-military people that work for us in the cyber side. We have a fairly robust cyber capability in both protecting as well as trying to penetrate people's network to help them better protect.
And you hold an MBA from Harvard University, a political science degree from Duke, and you've worked for NASA and for MIT. Is that correct?
Well, I have worked with NASA and with MIT. That is correct. Coming from West Texas, I don't always tell people about Harvard. They're a little worried about Harvard there.
Okay. So if we could go to page, just so that we can do this quickly, Mr. Allen, if we go to page 10 of your affidavit, where you describe the comparison of the Dominion and Hart machines in comparison to the other machines used in Georgia. What did you find when you did that comparison?
We were concerned because we had seen some audit logs in Dallas in 2018. So this really started for us long before this election. And we started actually with ES&S, but we eventually got into Dominion because we saw many of the same problems with Dominion in elections that we saw with ES&S. So the first thing we wanted to do was to see what the effect was of a Dominion machine compared to one other. And we looked at it, or excuse me, compared to a group of others, and we looked at it from 3 points of view. And the first thing we did is we tried to go through the 2017 census demographics. We got the 2020 vote count by county for the country. And then we also got the Election Assistance Committee voting machine information, so we knew what each county had. And you would normally assume that once you do the correlation between turnout and voters and counties, et cetera, and how they voted in the previous election, you get a pretty good mathematical model as to what you should expect to see in a Biden versus Trump by county vote. And then we went and tested that, and sure enough, we found that the model was pretty darn accurate, other than a few extreme outliers that we do want to now go back and look at in more detail. But the point is, we could see on a percentage basis whether Biden, for instance, outperformed by a certain percentage or underperformed by a certain percentage, what you would expect in a county. And normally you would expect that overperformance and underperformance to about zero out. Well, in this case, what we noticed is when we went back and looked at it, instead of all voting equipment all over the country, and we simply segmented out Dominion, we found out that Biden outperformed what he should have by about 5% across the board. It was actually amazing. No other, we did not see that result in most other cases. So then we said, well, you know, this is the election system. We've got to make sure that it's right. So we went back and we looked at it instead of percentage outperformance or underperformance, we looked at it by county. And when we did it by counties, we found an even more startling result. We found out that if Dominion counts your votes, Mr. Biden got about 78% of the wins. And if you use all other voting machines, then you only got about a 46%. So we noticed right away, again, a second marker that with Dominion, he significantly outperformed any other voting system. And I won't bore the committee with what that is. It's a regression of sorts. And it allows you to sort data into various boxes. And what we did is we wanted to find out, using this analysis, whether or not, again, Dominion outperformed the others. And it was very interesting because, once again, we came up with about the same number and we got about the same answer. And this analysis said that you get about a 5.5% bump compared to all other voting equipment as compared to Dominion compared to others. And when you apply that to the actual vote, then you find out that we're talking a fairly serious number of votes doing Dominion versus others. I think I jotted the number down here. Yeah. We found using our first analysis that about 123,000 votes in Georgia would have been entirely outside the realm of what you would have expected had another voting system been used. And if you use the chi-squared analysis, you got to about 136,000. So either way, it was a very significant number of votes. We did note that you had 199,356 mail-ins in 2016 with a 6.4% rejection rate. And then in 2020, you had 1,320,154 with a 0.2 rejection rate. So that got us looking then at the mail-in ballots. And we had already done an analysis in Dallas this voting cycle and had found that after the county posted registered votes, and they do that by posting the voter record, so you can see a lot of data. You can see the name, the address, the date someone asked for a mail-in, the date they were mailed that mail-in, and the date it was returned. And what we found is that in early voting, over 57,000 votes were tampered with after the county had first recorded them as being voted. So we went and we did the same kind of look at in Georgia. And what we found was very interesting because we found over 200,000 mail-in ballots that when we looked at the voter record had supposedly never been returned. And yet they were voted. Now, about half of those ultimately got purged, but about 96,000 of those were never marked returned, and yet they were voted. And we have seen that in other areas of the country because it's very easy in the Dominion system to assign a person to a mail-in ballot inside the system itself.
Sir,
that's one possible explanation.
May I just interrupt with one question? To assign it that way would, of course, be fraudulent, wouldn't it?
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have no idea. You just have a ballot in the adjudication file, for instance, and you decide to vote it, and you assign it to a voter.
How many times, approximately, did you
Well,
find?
there were about 96,000 of those that we found I think the exact, 96,600 was the exact number of mail-in ballots that were voted, but were never actually shown as received back by the county.
96,000?
Else you would like to point out? I think that's pretty complete.
I think that's pretty much got it.
So there's 96,600 votes that were counted, never received, and assigned somewhere, and these
Yes.
would have to be considered illegal votes, wouldn't they?
Right. And by the way, I would say this was not just mere oversight by one or two counties, because we saw this pretty much across the board. And so this was an across the board problem. And we also saw a couple other interesting things. We noticed that sometimes the ballot was actually shown as being voted before it was received back. There was a receive back date, but it was voted before the county received it back.
How could that be possible?
Well, you'll have to explain that one to me too, because it's not supposed to be that way.
Okay.
We also saw a situation where ballots were voted the exact same day that they were mailed out. So they were mailed in. Somehow they managed to make the round trip on the exact same day. We saw it happen just one day after, so that you mail it on a Tuesday and Wednesday afternoon in the mail you got the ballot back. We just saw a lot of these kinds of problems with the mail-in ballot. But it was the 96,000 that were never received back that really jumped out at us in a big way.
It's in the margin between President Trump and Joe Biden on mail-in votes.
I don't actually have that number handy, I'm sorry.
Well, if I told you 399,000, would that sound about right?
That's probably in the ballpark,
Okay.
yes, sir.
Thank you.
Are there any questions, Mr. Ramsden?
Would you like to sit or stand?
Mr. Colson?
Why don't you stand and I'll